Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, Saturday night, Lincoln, Nebraska, Colorado coming to town. And I think that this is a game that we go to the end of November and look back on and say, this might be the most watched college football game we see all of 2024. There are going to be so many eyeballs on this football game. Now, we got into our game preview and prediction on Sunday afternoon. We're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into this football game, specifically from a Nebraska standpoint, and take a look at some keys on the offensive side of the football and the defensive side for Nebraska to have success against Colorado. Now, we're going to do the exact same thing for Colorado as well. Now, before we get into I let it fly in the comments section. Dill, the Nebraska-Colorado preview and prediction episode, it was a war zone in the comments section. I think that's the beauty of college football. So, again, whether you're a Nebraska fan, a Colorado fan, would love to hear some of your takes in the comment section. Of course, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, without further ado, let's start with this Nebraska offense. Obviously, it's a much more open offense with Dylan Raiola at quarterback. The one thing I'm looking for, and the one thing that Colorado, quite frankly, specifically in the first half, struggled massively against North Dakota State, was North Dakota State really exploited Colorado in man coverage. And it wasn't necessarily attacking the boundary cornerbacks in terms of DJ McKinney and Travis Hunter, two guys that I think are really good. But when they had their matchups in terms of, slot wide receivers on safeties, running backs on linebackers, they were really able to get after Colorado. What can Nebraska do to take advantage of what I think? I think you're going to see a very similar game plan for Colorado against Nebraska. We're going to trust our guys on the perimeter to hold up in man coverage. We're going to put a safety in the box to try to stop this Nebraska rushing attack. I think the question is, can this Nebraska offense take advantage of the man coverage that they're going to see? If they can, I think they put themselves in a really good spot to move the football relatively consistently against Colorado.
And Nebraska should be able to do that at a far higher level. And I think not only because Dylan Raiola is a far more capable quarterback, at least from what he showed against UTEP, than what they had last year, but also I think they have wide receivers and weapons on the boundary who can actually do a couple of different things, if you will, or have a much more diverse set of skills. I mean, you have your guys like Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair who are really, really good at playing that boundary wide receiver position, I should say, and being able to beat man coverage. Obviously, Isaiah Nair, a guy who I think if you leave him one-on-one too many times in the boundary, can hurt you downfield and make some explosive plays that we just didn't see from Nebraska in the past. But also, I think you have a bunch of guys like a Ja'Cory Barney or a Jalen Lloyd, guys who, if they can get matchups in the slot, can really run good routes and can make plays after the catch. So I think Nebraska has a lot of different ways to hurt teams now on the boundary, especially in comparison to what they have last year. And when you kind of know man coverage is coming, I agree with you. At the end of the day, Colorado is going to need to stop this rushing attack. And I think to do that, they're going to need to commit a lot of bodies. Nebraska, far more physical team than North Dakota State. I think you're going to get your steady dose of man coverage. And if you know man coverage is coming, I think you can run certain plays along that, whether that's meshes, whether that's pick plays, those type of things that just beat man coverage and even how good your corners are. If you know that man coverage is coming, I think you can kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah, there's two things that you saw from North Dakota State to really take advantage of that man coverage. One, kind of attacking matchups. I think one of the matchups that I think really could be interesting for Nebraska is some of these running backs out of the backfield on linebackers. You saw North Dakota State hit a 60-yard play, first drive of the game on Trevor Woods on a running back in man coverage. You got guys like Emmett Johnson or Amir Johnson who I think are very capable pass catchers out of the backfield. If you get some of those looks, you certainly can go about attacking it. North Dakota State also did a really good job in terms of finding the other matchups, whether it was slot wide receivers on safeties like Cameron Silma and Craig. There are a couple different ways. And yes, Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks are certainly wide receivers that you can count on to win man coverage. But I don't necessarily know if that's the kind of matchup you want to attack, because I look at DJ McKinney and Travis Hunter and say those are very good boundary cornerbacks. But I look at Ja'Cory Barney or a guy like Emmett Johnson out of the backfield or Ramir Johnson. Those might be some of those matchups that you want to attack when you see that man coverage from Colorado. Dill, the second thing that I think could be really interesting for Nebraska is mixing up your personnel packages. And this is something that I think is a massive asset for Nebraska, where there's a lot of different personnel packages they like to throw into their offense. North Dakota State did the same thing against Colorado Thursday night. You saw 12 personnel, you saw 22 personnel, but every single personnel package you saw from North Dakota State, Colorado, they stayed in that nickel package. And so if you're going to run two tight end, like if you're going to run some 12 personnel and Colorado wants to stay in nickel, that gives Colorado or Nebraska, I should say, a massive opportunity to play the football game how they want it to be played. And that is run the football consistently, efficiently, keep this Colorado defense on the field, and kind of methodically work your way down the field. We talked about it in the preview and prediction. The number one statistical number that I'm looking for in terms of Nebraska winning this football game is time possession and how many plays they run on offense. Because again, you even look at the first half when North Dakota State played Colorado, that's exactly how you want it to look if you're North Dakota State or Nebraska against Colorado, staying on the football field, getting to the depth of this Colorado team. If they're going to stay in nickel all Saturday night, bring that 12 personnel package on and just consistently run the football.
No, I do think, and obviously that sounds good on the surface. So if they're going to play that nickel, just run the ball. I think at the end of the day, that tight end room for Nebraska needs to play better football than what we saw last year. Because I still think you want to have versatility out of that package. If you're going to run 12, you need to rely on your tight ends to be able to win their matchups occasionally. And obviously, you still want to be able to feed them a steady dose of the run game. I think everyone knows that's what Nebraska is going to do. But if you can't be versatile like they weren't last year, obviously, they couldn't throw out of certain looks because I didn't think the tight ends were quite playing good enough, but also obviously the quarterback wasn't playing good enough. So I think they need to still be able to use those tight ends and have them be more productive and be more of a focal point of what they're doing on offense. Because if they get back into that very predictable, okay, they're in this formation, it's going to be a run. I don't care how good you think your offensive line is. It's going to be tough to be able to be really, really consistent kind of playing that style.
I'm kind of interested to see. I think what it comes down to for Colorado is that I don't think they have a ton of trust in that linebacker room outside of Levante Bentley and Trevor Woods. They played pretty much the whole football game. Levante Bentley played phenomenal football, but I think they have a lot more trust in their defensive backs. They want Preston Hodge on the football field. If that's what they want to go to, that could be something Nebraska really could take advantage on, because I don't think Colorado has the trust in the linebackers to have three linebackers playing consistently throughout this football game Saturday night. Now, Dill, moving over to the defensive side of the football, this is, I think, by far one of the biggest keys for Nebraska, and that is you got to win with the light box. One of the things that Colorado still did not prove against North Dakota State was they kind of have do they have a rushing attack to keep a defense honest? And I think Nebraska has a very good chance at stopping this Colorado rushing attack with the light box. And you're going to have to do that when you're playing Colorado, because they're going to play 4 wide receiver sets. They're going to spread you out. They're going to try to attack you in space. And if you don't have the ability to win with a light box in terms of stopping the run and getting after the passer, and Colorado is going to make you pay when they get those one-on-one matchups on the outside. So can Nebraska stop this Colorado rushing attack, not only with the light box, but also getting after the passer with only 4 guys? Probably another key that you're looking for this Nebraska defense.
And frankly, I think you're extraordinarily confident about what this defensive line is going to do against this Colorado offensive line. I'm not sure it's quite as improved as maybe we all hoped. Obviously, still had a fair amount of struggles with North Dakota State. I think their pressure rate was 30%. That's way, way too high, frankly, for Colorado. So, again, a far better defensive line in Nebraska's front 4 than what North Dakota State was throwing. I think the thing I'm going to be looking for is Mekhi Bayer. I think last year I didn't think they necessarily had enough athletic linebacker play on that unit when they played Colorado, and those guys were able to get caught in bad positions, and then you got to see that speed and space dynamic of what Colorado likes to work on. I think Mekhi Bayer needs to have a huge game. And I thought he looked awesome against UTEP personally, and not a guy we necessarily got to see a ton of in that off-ball linebacker role last year, but had a really good game. I felt like was doing a good job making tackles in space, sniffing out screens, doing all those things that I think Nebraska kind of struggled with, frankly, at times last year. So him, Stefan Thompson, John Bullock, those guys are going to need to have really good games. And specifically, I'm looking at Thompson and Bayer because I think they do bring a different level of athleticism than what we saw last year.
Yeah, and it always helps when you have guys like Ty and Nash on the middle of the defensive line. Like, they are some of the most physically imposing interior defensive linemen that you see. Talk about stopping the run with the light box. You can certainly do that with guys like Ty and Nash on the football field. Another interesting storyline, you go back to the Colorado game against North Dakota State. I would almost push back at you. Like, I think this Colorado offensive line is more improved than I think a lot of people think. That being said, you can still see that this Colorado offensive line is relatively new in terms of the chemistry and the gel of this unit, right? There was some significant shakeups to this Colorado offensive line. Not only do you have a ton of new faces coming in, but throughout the last couple of weeks of fall camp, they moved Tyler Brown out to tackle. They moved Khalil Benson back into guard. You saw North Dakota State have some success with some of those games and stunts up front because the chemistry and the communication in terms of passing off those stunts was not great for Colorado. You have Ty Robinson Nash, as big and physically imposing as those football players are. They're also phenomenal athletes, have the ability to do some of those things. So if you can get them in a 3rd and long and only rush 4, but kind of run some of those stunts in some of those games and test the chemistry and communication of this Colorado offensive line, that's another avenue where I think Nebraska can have success rushing the passer with 4 guys. Last thing I want to talk about red zone defense. I think at the end of the day, you kind of got to accept that Colorado's going to move the football. I think Shedeur Sanders might be the best quarterback in college football. I mean, he played phenomenally against North Dakota State. That being said, you can see this Colorado offense not have a total plan in the red zone when they get there, because this is a Colorado offense that wants to exploit space. And what happens in the red zone? Space gets tight. Now, their really only plan is I'm going to throw the football to Travis Hunter, which is that's a phenomenal plan. I can't really argue with that plan. Travis Hunter is a freaky athlete in terms of the ball skills. That being said, if you're Nebraska, field goals are going to win you this football game. There will be times where Nebraska, or Colorado, I should say, hit some explosive plays. They move the football inside of the 20. If you can force them to take field goals, you got a really good chance of winning this football game here.
Yeah, and that's where Nebraska should have a lot of success, because I think you're kind of right. You don't need to do a whole lot if you're Nebraska to stop the run. I think, again, there's physically up front with those front 4. You should be fine for the most part. So I think, again, you can really take the space away. You can drop into those like zones and just be really difficult to finish drives off. And Colorado struggled with that all year last year. So it's not like a new problem necessarily. It's something they haven't quite gotten their rhythm doing. And again, I think Nebraska certainly has the personnel and just but it's got to happen, because that probably will be one of the keys to this game. Because I think you're right. At the end of the day, Colorado is probably going to move the ball on most teams they play, just because they will hit their explosive plays. It's just really hard to put a cap on that offense consistently enough all game. So you bow up in the red zone, and then obviously you score in the red zone. If you're Nebraska, that probably will be a decider.
That's what we have. Now we're going to run the same thing for Colorado, and a lot of the same concepts that we just talked about for Nebraska are going to apply for Colorado in terms of how you want to get after Nebraska. So the Nebraska fans that would invite you guys to listen, maybe not if you don't want to listen to how Colorado maybe can beat Nebraska, but would love for you guys to check that episode out. Again, all the support, it means the world to the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all